Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar. Appreciate you jumping on the line with us. My name is Jason Little, and I'm with Sierra-Cedar. I'm going to be walking you through a demonstration today of some of the various cloud solutions that we're going to be discussing. This is going to be a kind of an informal webinar. We can certainly take questions as we go along here, or we can take questions at the end, so feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go, or we can also take some questions at the end. So for today's session, we also have Laura Alvis on the line with us today from Duke University Health System, and I'm going to do some quick introductions here in just a second of Laura, as well as kind of talk at a high level about the agenda. So from an agenda standpoint, we're planning on going to 2 o'clock this afternoon, but I think we may wrap up a little bit early, depending on how many questions we have here today. So today's webinar was really around providing some education and some knowledge transfer, if you will, around the journey from on-premise to the various Oracle Cloud solutions. And at Sierra-Cedar, we've been, of course, working in this area and working with clients through this journey for the last few years. And today's agenda is really going to focus on the formerly known as the Hyperion applications that ran on-premise for several years, as well as the Hyperion Essbase application. For those of you that are familiar with those tools on-premise, those are the products that have been running on-premise for decades and are used by thousands of clients today. We wanted to, in the webinar today, just share with you kind of the direction and roadmap that clients like Duke University Health System are heading, as well as just give you a journey, a little update on the journey of how you can move to the cloud, as well as walk you through a demonstration of some of the cloud services. So if you look here at the list today, for those of you that are familiar with some of this terminology, this will make a lot of sense. For those of you that are not, just a quick kind of level set on some of the terminology we're going to use today. The financial consolidation and close service, also referred to as FCCS, is the consolidation and close service to replace the on-premise Hyperion financial management product. And as clients are, or you can also implement it as a net new kind of financial consolidation solution. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the journey from on-premise to cloud and touch a little bit on what some clients are doing in that area, as well as leveraging the planning and budgeting cloud service. For those of you that are familiar with the legacy planning and budgeting products, Hyperion Planning, we'll talk about kind of what options are available there, as well as the Enterprise Performance Reporting Cloud Service, which is a performance reporting solution. And then lastly, today we're going to talk about what we call OAC Essbase, and OAC stands for Oracle Analytics Cloud. And for those of you that are familiar with Essbase, which I think everyone is that joined here today, of course, there's been a version available on-premise of Essbase for several years now. And more recently, that solution has been enabled in the cloud under the Oracle Analytics Cloud solutions. And we're going to talk about that today, as well as just share some additional information around how clients are using Essbase. So with that kind of introduction, I was going to introduce Laura Alvis, and she's going to quickly talk about kind of the journey, if you will, at Duke University Health System and the university, and kind of what direction they're heading. Of course, Laura is on the health system side. So Laura, I'll kick it over to you to kind of share some quick background on your environment on premise and kind of what led you to, look at going to the cloud with these services. Laura, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So as Jason mentioned, I am in the health system side at Duke, and I'm the Director of Financial Reporting. So currently, we are in version 11.1.2.3 and premise, and we use HFM for the consolidation for the health system, and the university also uses HFM as well for their consolidation tool. So in the health system side, we do all of our consolidation HFM, our journal entries, eliminations, those sort of things, and then we export the HFM data into a Hyperion Essbase database, and that database houses other information such as our utilization statistics or FTEs, our non-financial data, together with our financial data that we use for our monthly financial reporting and analysis purposes. Then we also have about 6 other Essbase applications that are used for tax purposes as well as budgeting purposes and cost allocation, those sort of things. And about, I think around 300 reports and about 75 books built in Hyperion Reports today that are used throughout finance in the health system. We've been kind of long time Hyperion customer. I think back in 2001 we implemented Enterprise, and so have kind of gone from there in the Hyperion world. So it has worked very well, and we really like Essbase a lot for our purpose. So we usually go through an upgrade by every 5 years. So we last upgraded we went from System 9 to version 11 back in 2014. So when we started looking at what we want to do next, we really do not look at other solutions outside of Hyperion, because we do like the product and wanted to leverage what we currently had built and some of the interfaces we have built already. So one of the decisions we were looking at when going from on-premise to the cloud is we do not have what I would call Hyperion IT support. It's all managed in our finance group. And, lately, as our IT department pushes out updates and things like that, we've had to start troubleshooting a lot within finance. Why does this web browser not work with Workspace and SmartView and that sort of thing? So we wanted to take advantage of going to the cloud to get away from having these IT responsibilities in finance of, applying the patches, troubleshooting when applications aren't responding and that sort of thing, and to be able to take advantage of having the latest updates from Oracle. So I think they push things out monthly in the cloud, understand, and we'll get a process in place in order to review those updates. So, but that way we can make sure we're staying in the most current version and not having to do the IT troubleshooting in finance, and can focus on what we do best. So for our project, the project does include both the health system and the university from the HFM perspective of migrating HFM to FCCS in the cloud. And then the health system, we are converting our Essbase applications to OAAC, and then also converting all of our reports and books that are currently in financial reports to EPRCS. So we kicked off the project a little less than a month ago. So it's with the holidays and vacations in between. We're, I would say, about 3 weeks into the project, so we're not too far along, but I can kind of share a couple of items that we've learned so far, unless you guys have questions on that.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I don't know if anyone has any questions, you can certainly jump in, but go ahead, Laura.
Okay. So just a couple of things we've learned. So at the beginning of the project, we knew that OAAC requires you to go to EPRCS. So that was part of the reason for going that route. Also, we want to take advantage of the additional functionality and the ongoing investment that Oracle is putting into EPRCS. the existing financial reporting does continue to work with FCCS, and so I know the university was debating whether or not they would go to EPRCS or continue in the old financial reporting application. So that was kind of a decision point for them. The other thing is we load our data into HFM from our GL on a year-to-date basis. So it was not until October that Oracle provided the ability to load year-to-date data in FCCS. Before then, it only allowed periodic data load. So, but kind of the new feature we learned is that even though it gives you the ability now to load year-to-date data, your journals have to be done on a periodic basis. So we're currently working through that with Sierra-Cedar and Oracle to see if that's going to be more of just a process change for us, or you know, how to move forward. But not a showstopper, but that was a learning opportunity that we had. The other learning opportunity was the Oracle has a entity dimension. It limits the number of members and the entity dimension in FCCS to 5,000 members. For the health system, that's really not a big deal because our intent from the very beginning of this project was to simplify HFM and to only keep our current year, our current fiscal year and prior fiscal year data in HFM. Since we use Essbase for everything, Essbase is going to house all of our historical data and everything. But it's, so for us, that's not a huge issue. We'll be under that. But in the university, it's more of a bigger issue because they only use HFM and they have lots of funds on the university side, and then they wanted to keep more historical data. So working through that, and I think they may end up actually using Essbase, beginning to use Essbase and archiving their data there. But so, you know, we're not very far along in the project, so I can't really give you a lot of progress that's been made, but we're getting ready to start validating data probably next week. And as far as our Essbase applications go, but those are kind of the things that we've learned. Our goal is we're working towards running parallel for closing out February and March, because we want to be completely on the cloud environment when we start reporting in April. And we're a June 30 year end, so we want to be done, move forward, everything completed, so that in the fourth quarter we're in the new environment and not having to go through anything during year end. That's kind of where we are.
A quick question, Laura, that was just asked. How many cubes are you migrating to OAC? How many total cubes?
We're doing 7 cubes.
Yeah, 7 cubes in total, Jeff. So, you know, fairly small Essbase environment, but I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know, environments and clients where you may have, you know, potentially 20, 30, 40 Essbase cubes. But in the case of the health system, they have 7 today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura. I guess any other comments, Laura, at this point? Or if not, we'll see if there's any questions. And if there aren't any further questions at this point, we'll jump right into a demonstration.
I don't have anything further.
All right. Well, thank you. And again, as we go through this today, certainly we can address any questions at the end as well, or feel free to send us any follow-up emails with comments or questions. We'd be happy to respond as well. And lastly, I am recording this webinar today, so we can share that as well if you'd like a copy. All right, well, now we're going to shift gears and we're going to go into our demonstration that we're going to show you today. So what you're looking at here on screen, and let me know if anyone has any questions or can see my screen okay or is having any issues, but it should be refreshing okay. So I'm currently logged into the Essbase Analytics Cloud. And for those of you that are familiar with Essbase, you obviously are familiar with Essbase Administration Services. Well, this is kind of the the replacement for that, if you will, because this is the new way of managing all of your Essbase applications. Now, there's a lot of functionality that's much different from EAS, but there's also areas that are very similar to EAS. So in the case of the health system, for example, they have 7 total applications. So just like in previous versions, with the cloud, you have an interface here that you can click to go in and see all your applications. Jobs, which jobs represent loading data and moving data to the cloud from your on-premise source systems. You have all your files that folks are familiar with. Files would be things like your source data files to load your dimensions and your data, source files for things like load rules and calculations. So a quick kind of point there is the Essbase Cloud version, comes with a function editor to write your calculations, as well as a rules editor to create rules for loading data and building dimensions, as well as rules for allocating data if you needed to write allocation. So there's really no changes there in terms of the functionality of core Essbase. It's just all those files are kind of stored there. You also have scenarios, and scenarios is new. That's a new feature for this particular version, and that is a nice feature. And the health system at Duke is kind of looking and evaluating whether they implement this or not. But basically, it's a way to create what-if scenarios within Essbase on the fly, and the administrator can go in and set up these predefined data models that allow you to model your revenue data, your expense data, et cetera, and look at different scenarios by making changes to drivers. So, for example, you could, change. You could have 10 different scenarios, for example, with 10 different revenue drivers, and you could go in and view the data across those different scenarios. So it's a nice feature that is new for Essbase in the cloud. But to look at your applications, it's real simple. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because this is more for, the Essbase power users and whatnot. But you can go right in just like you can today. Here's a list of all your applications. I can drill right in and see which applications are started, which ones are stopped, et cetera. And I can drill right in and I can look at the outline. I can expect and do the inspect of the application. So just a couple quick things I'll point out here within the application. If I pull up the outline, for those of you that are familiar with Essbase, think of the outline as your dimensional layout of the application, and how the application lays out dimensionally. And then you can also do the inspect, which allows you to look at the dimensions, et cetera, of the application. So give me a second here. It looks like I've lost my connection. Great, right in the middle of my demo. Try this again. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to open, well, I'll just open this application and see what I got here. Yeah, let me go ahead and close this. I'm just going to reopen a browser session here, and we'll go back in and relog in. Okay, so we'll try to look at another outline here. So for those of you that are kind of familiar with this, of course, you can see all your applications, and here's the application, here's the database, and hopefully, if it works this time, there. So now you can pull up the outline. For those of you that are familiar with this tool, that's the dimensions of your model, right? So that's your accounts, your scenarios, your years, your time periods, your entities and your organizational structure, your funds, et cetera, within the application. And you can manage that here, very similar to how you use EAS today. You have all your members and all your properties over here on the right. And, you can drill up and down and, look at the structure of the application here as well within the outline. The other thing is you can look at using what's called the inspect feature, which basically just, pulls up the application, but gives you all the different properties of the application. So you see here, I have a FinPlan application. This is a block storage application within the cloud. For those of you that are familiar with the Essbase tool, you can create your traditional block storage cubes, aggregate storage cubes, or hybrid, which for those of you that aren't familiar with hybrid, basically it's just a hybrid of BSO, ASO, and that's kind of the default storage option in the cloud, where your level 0 data, your base level data is stored within the application, and then all your roll-ups and aggregations are stored at a higher level. So that's just a quick overview of the Essbase application, and this is what we're working with right now on with the health system on kind of bringing their applications, migrating them here, and then validating the data, et cetera. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to jump into SmartView. And for those of you that are familiar with the term SmartView, it's the same reporting tool for some of the legacy Hyperion products. And you'll see here, I'm within a Excel spreadsheet, and I have my standard income statement here that I'm looking at within Excel. And the nice thing about the Essbase solution is in real time, you can refresh this data right from the application. So here I'm looking at a standard P&L where I have my actuals for the prior year. I have my actuals for the current year. I have a variance from prior year to current year. I have my budget and my budget variance. And I can just go in and set up these reports right here within SmartView and just refresh the data. And the health system does a lot of this at Duke. They have a lot of different SmartView templates like this where they go in and basically refresh their data right here into Excel. And you can do it different ways, right? You can do it kind of in a template approach, like I'm showing you right now, which is just a real easy template, or you can use, things like multi-grid reports, where here's another example in SmartView where the health system is looking at, fiscal year 2016 versus 17 and looking at the data different ways. You can also do like butterfly reports where you look at, here you'll see I have my actuals year to date versus my budget year to date. And all the data you're looking at here doesn't make any sense. This is all just made up kind of random data that we created for a demo purposes. So, the numbers here are just kind of randomly created numbers. Of course, you can do reports like revenue analysis as well. And as I move from sheet to sheet here, all I do is connect and set the connection for the particular sheet I'm working on. And you'll see here now I'm looking at a quarterly report of my revenue. I can just refresh that right here in the report, and it brings back the latest numbers in Excel. So a lot of our clients, like the Duke University Health System, they make extensive use of this SmartView interface with Essbase because it's very user-friendly for finance. So it's a very quick learning curve for departmental users or finance users to have a familiar, easy-to-use interface to report on the data and create reports, but also to do ad hoc reporting. So if I scroll over here, you'll see I have an ad hoc tab here too. And the nice thing about this particular interface is on the fly in an ad hoc fashion, I can drill down and create my own reports as well. And again, this is all designed for the business side, right? So, no IT involvement. And some of this is, basic for those of you that are longtime Essbase users. I know there's a couple of those on the phone here. But for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a really quick learning curve to get up to speed on how to report and generate data right through Excel. So you'll see here I did an ad hoc report and I have my dimensions. This is a simple model here where I have my accounts, I have my entities, my years, my period, and my scenario. So in an ad hoc fashion, let's say I wanted to do a quick analysis of 2017 actuals, and I wanted to drill in and look at postage expenses, and I wanted to compare actual to budget by department. And I know a lot of times in the business, those questions come up a lot. You may want to look at a certain expense account or a certain revenue account, and you want to drill down and you want to see the lowest level of detail and how it compares to budget or forecast, how it's trended over time. And that's really why the business makes extensive use of this tool. So here I can go in and I'll do just some basic member selection here. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, like with my years, I can select here in this application. I have historical data going back to fiscal year 2000. So in this example, and this is actually very similar to the data at the at Duke Health System as well as the universities, they have data that goes back 10 plus years. And the nice thing about the Essbase application is we can store data, all the way back for as many historical years as you'd like to store it. And that's one of the key things of the tool. In this case, I've got data back to 2000. So I can either just drill in and look at my data by year and select what year I want. So notice when I just double click, it just expanded it out to all the years. And I'm just going to do a simple keep only to, look at just my my current year. I'm also going to change to my default aliases here. So I'm going to look at 2017. And from a period perspective, I'm just going to look at year to date, and I'm going to keep only on that member. And then on my scenarios, I'm going to look at actual data. So I'm going to select actuals, select OK, and refresh my ad hoc report. So just like that, I've created a simple report showing the actual year to date for 2017 for all entities, all accounts. And then from here, I can simply drill into account, for example, and I can select, I want to look at revenue and expenses. Then I can drill into my revenue and expenses and start to drill into the application. I can also set my options on how I want to display the data. So for example, I have a Smart View menu here, and I can go into my options. And I have all kinds of options for users to set how they want to display the data when they're writing ad hoc reports. But one of those is kind of how you want to display missing data, as well as how you want to indent data and format the data when you're using the application. So these options, obviously, I'm not going to cover them a lot here today, but you can make a simple change like change the indentation to total and then refresh the data, and then you just get a simple view of how the data is organized. And then I can, continue to drill down, drill into my expenses. Let's say I want to look at, non-capital expenses, which is where I want to go in this particular example. And I can continue to drill down, drill into either labor expense or non-labor expense. So you see here in a very ad hoc fashion, I can really answer any question relative to your financial data, right? Because you can just simply drill into this to whatever level you want. If I drill into non-labor expense, here's all my non-labor expenses categories. And then, of course, if I wanted to, look at drugs or medical supplies or non-medical supplies, et cetera, other expenses. So, again, kind of picking, the category. I'm going to go into non-medical supplies. So I wanted, in my example, I wanted to look at office supplies and materials. So I'll keep that and, continue my drill down to the lowest level of detail, which is my postage expense. So as you see, I can quickly kind of get to 2017 year-to-date data for all entities for postage expense. Now I could also drill into my entities here and start to lay out, okay, from an entity perspective, I want to look at this postage expense across multiple departments. So I could, select the postage expense, continue to drill down. Now I'm drilling into the hospital operations, drilling into the consolidated results. And so now you're seeing I can, look at that expense across all of the hospital operations, all the way down to individual departments. And previously, right now, I'm looking at 2017. Well, it's just a simple drill up, drill down, and now I'm looking at that particular account in the last 20 years of history. So again, very flexible way of doing ad hoc analysis within the cloud solution. So the last thing I was going to show you here from SmartView is you also have, and for those of you that are familiar with the analytics solution with Essbase, some of this will make a lot of sense. For those of you that are new, in addition to the interface I was showing you earlier, the cloud interface here where you can see all your applications and work with them, you also have the ability to look at all of your cubes via Cube Designer here within SmartView. So with the cloud, and this is something that's not available on premise, is you can actually maintain and build your entire financial reporting application right through Cube Designer here within SmartView. So here I'm going to go ahead and connect here to the Essbase application. I'm going to go in and I'm going to export an application here to Excel, and just to keep with the same demonstration we've been working on, I'll look at this demo healthcare example. And I'm going to export this with calculation scripts. I can export it with data, but for now, I'm just going to focus more on the application itself. And I select Run, and what that does is it takes the entire application and it builds an Excel workbook for you that shows you, the dimensions of the application, the settings, and more importantly, across the bottom here, you'll see you have your chart of accounts. You have your accounts dimension with, which is what I was just looking at in Excel, right? This is all of your accounts within your chart of accounts. So you'll see here within, this example, we've got, 4,686 accounts. And it shows you, the parent, the child, the storage, the consolidation, the alias, et cetera here, any comments you have. So it kind of gives you these high-level properties associated with Essbase as well. So the other thing I was going to show you is over here on the right, if I switch to my Essbase Cloud Cube Designer, I can also look at the settings here in this little window over here on the right that also shows me my dimensions, shows me the properties, any calculations I have, etc. Now, the nice thing about the Cube Designer, though, is I can go right in here and I can maintain my data right here within SmartView. So I could add a new account, I could delete account, I could change the description of the account, I could add a new roll-up for my accounts. All that can be done right here in Excel by just simply inserting a row. I just insert a row wherever I want to add the new account or move it around, and I can just, in this example, I'll just do something real quick. I'll just copy and paste this over the top of row 20. And then for inpatient revenue, let's say I have a brand new account that I wanted to model 3,600, and I can add that right here in the spreadsheet. Define the properties, what it rolls up to, its alias, and we'll call this just, revenue example 1. And then I can submit that and build it, load it right back to Essbase here from the Cube Designer. So it's a quick and easy way to maintain your dimensions. Now, for those of you that are Essbase power users and have been using this product for a long time, you can run jobs, like I was saying, to update this for you. This is more of the kind of the quick and easy manual approach for a finance user within SmartView. But the nice thing about the Cube Designer is it allows you to work with all your dimensions here, so your accounts, your periods, your scenarios, your years, your entities, but also all of your calculations. So here, all of your calculation scripts can also be edited and modified right here within Excel now and just uploaded back to the application. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to shift gears now and move to the Enterprise Performance Reporting application, which, again, earlier we talked about, this is where Laura mentioned they're going to be creating those books and report packages, highly formatted reports, board quality reports that go into, let's say, a budget book or a financial reporting package. And this particular tool allows you to create those reports as well as combine the financial data, the revenue, expense, the balance sheet data with narrative information. So I'm going to show you a quick example here. I'm going to go into my report packages, and you'll see here I have different report packages. Think of a report package as a collection of reports for, let's say, multiple entities or multiple departments as a simple example. So you'll see here I have a FinPlan book, and I'm just going to run that report here within the cloud, and you'll see here it gives me opens what's called the report center, where I can create a table of contents and I can have reference documents to narrative information, charts, graphs, etc. And this tool allows you to combine all that together. In this example, I'm just creating the old-fashioned reports, and you'll see here I can output this here, and it just generates the reports for me online. And you'll see the big difference here is now I'm getting into those board reports as well as books and management reports that need a lot of formatting, etc. So I have a little table of contents, and then as I scroll down, now I get the typical financial statement type report that you need to print off or you can share as a PDF document. So you'll see here you have some flash financials showing you things like FTEs and revenue and expenses and margin, and then you also have balance sheet data. And as I scroll down, these are just a collection of reports that I've added into this report package. So I have my statement of operations, which again shows the breakdown of my revenue and expenses down through my margins, and then lastly I have some supplemental data. Keeping in mind, like you can pull statistical data into the application as well. So you can pull things like patient days and discharges and length of stay and procedures and cases. This isn't patient data, of course. This is just some statistical data that shows, that supplemental data for your financial reporting. So that's just a quick overview of kind of how these reports, and for those of you that are familiar with the Hyperion tools on premise, which I know a couple of you are, this is kind of the future, if you will, for financial reports and books. And in the on-premise version, it was known as Financial Report Studio. So the other thing I can do here within these report books and packages is I can create fully formatted packages as well that include all my narrative information, my management notes, references to performance measures and KPIs, mission statements, profiles. So this example, I'm pulling up this is a government example of Lucas County 2020 budget book. And you'll see here, this is the complete book for the entire county. And you can, to give you just a quick overview, across the top here, you can have different report authors, different report package reviewers, and folks that sign off on them. You could put review and approval around these packages, etc. And the nice thing about this, if you look at the table of contents, underneath this report package is a Microsoft Word document that serves as the source for all of the narrative information that you see here within this table of contents, as well as the data that you see in this package comes directly from either the Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, the Financial Consolidation Cloud Service, or the OAC Essbase. This report wider works across all of the different cloud solutions. So if I select Run here or Preview, it just allows me to preview this package here online. Of course, I could run this package. I could publish this package to PDF or send it out to folks with an email link. But you'll see this particular package now pulls up my 2020 adopted budget and plan. And as I scroll down here, you're going to see this is the full, budget book or actual book that has, full table of contents as well as all your financial data, budget summary, reports. And again, all this data comes live from the EPM applications, but all of the narrative information that you see in these report packages is pulled directly from a Microsoft Word document as the source. So this is called the Enterprise Performance Reporting Cloud Service to create books and report packages. So the last thing I wanted to show everyone today is the Financial Consolidation and Close Cloud Service. So now I've moved, and you'll notice the interface is very similar here to all of the services within FCCS. You have things like your consolidation tasks, you have journals, you have reports, approvals, etc. here from within the financial consolidation application. If I select data here, this allows me to look at this. I got signed off here. Let me log back in. So I'm going to go into data. And this particular application, it looks and feels to some degree like Essbase, but it's also, HFM type functionality. And I know there's a couple people on the line that are familiar with Hyperion Financial Management, but, here's where you can have, your consolidated results to look at, the consolidation status, exchange rates and things like that. If you have multiple currencies that you're reporting on, you can look at your intercompany, you can look at your journals. All that information is right here within this particular application. So if I pull up balance sheet, I can look at, for example, my balance sheet by consolidation. And if I open that up, it just opens up a simple consolidated balance sheet here. And this is familiar for those of you that are familiar with HFM. This is just a data form, so I can see all my balance sheet accounts, and I can see it in entity currency. I can see the parent currency. I can see any eliminations. I can see the consolidated parent currency, the entity total currency, and then the total. So, this consolidation functionality is very similar to HFM. And then across the top, it keeps track of your movements for balance sheet movements. It keeps track of your intercompany, your view. I know Laura mentioned earlier the periodic versus year-to-date consideration that they've come across, et cetera. So nice, familiar interface, simple to use, again, kind of built for that finance user that's running consolidations. You can also go into journals, and here's where as Laura mentioned earlier, this is the big use that both the Duke University side and the health system side do today, is they do a number of journals. So here it's very similar. You can go in and create new journals, edit existing journals, set up reoccurring journals, set up journal templates. So all that functionality is right here within the journals module. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the overview today. I just wanted to summarize one last time the solution that we're implementing at Duke University, and the health system combines together the Essbase Analytics solution with the Financial Consolidation Cloud Service and the Enterprise Performance Reporting Cloud Service. At this current state, they do not use the planning and budgeting cloud service. That may be something they look at in the future, but the scope of their project does not include any planning and budgeting functionality. So at this point, I'll open it up to any questions, if there's any questions or feedback. If not, we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. All right, well, it looks like actually there is one question came through on, go ahead. So someone had asked a question on the Essbase data load process. This obviously is a question from somebody that knows Essbase pretty well, but yes, you can. So with Essbase today, some of this is kind of new information, but you can, when you load your data, you can create scripts to automate that process. And with the current release of the Oracle Analytics Cloud Service, you have a Essbase command line interface, and that allows you to basically automate the loading of data as well as the validation of data. So yes, you do have access to what's called the Essbase command line interface to create scripts to update your data, your dimensions in an automated script fashion that pulls the data from your source systems. All right, any other questions?
Hi, Jason. Jeff Gilliam.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you? What was the process to do the sizing for the Essbase environment?
Oh, good question. Good question. Yeah, so from the sizing standpoint, we work with Oracle, and we use what's called a sizing calculator to estimate the size of the environments required. So in the case of Duke, they had a total of 7 cubes, and those were fairly smaller cubes compared to some of the cubes you're used to, Jeff. So they didn't need a huge environment. They used what's called 4 OCPUs. So when you size the environment, OAC is based on what's called an OCPU under the covers. And an OCPU, kind of technical question and technical response, is made up of 2 virtual CPUs. So in the case of Duke, they have 2 environments. They have a test environment and they have a production environment. And each one of those environments we allocated 2 OCPUs to. So each environment is basically a quad, right, virtual processor under the covers. So in their case, their data sets were fairly small and they didn't have a large number of users. So in their case, 2 OCPUs was sufficient to run their 7 cubes. But the rule of thumb is you're typically looking at around 20 to 40, concurrent users per processor. So that discussion, Jeff, is all about, sizing out and looking at the number of Essbase applications you have and how many processors that you would need, to facilitate your data sets as well as your users. And in the case of Duke, we use the pricing, the calculator to come up with 4 OCPUs, 2 for test, 2 for production, and using that 20 to 40 concurrent user benchmark per processor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Jason. And we're also looking at moving to FCCS from HFM. And my understanding, it's a different topology, but it has the same functionality. What are some of the considerations in migrating from a pure HFM implementation on premise to the cloud leveraging FCCS?
Yeah, good question. So I think some of the key considerations, Laura touched on a couple of them actually earlier that that came up at Duke, but a couple things. One is keep in mind that FCCS is based on Essbase. So everything you're looking at here, Essbase under the covers, is facilitating, everything. So that's, one thing to keep in mind is the architecture and the technology is based on Essbase for financial consolidation and close. And then the other thing is, it's very important, and I think this is a good lesson that we've learned, is to do an assessment of how you use HFM today. Things like Laura mentioned earlier. Do you load data on a year-to-date basis or a periodic basis? Do you have journal entries that you do within HFM? Do you have intercompany or currency calculations? Do you have any sort of custom rules that you've maybe written within HFM? Because all of those, are considerations in building the application in the cloud. So there is no migration per se from HFM to FCCS. It's really rebuilding the application with the financial consolidation cloud service, taking into consideration, everything that you do in HFM today, from journals to intercompany to currency to eliminations, et cetera, and kind of going through that process, as well as things like year-to-date and periodic, like Laura mentioned, as well as looking at the size of the application. How many members are in each dimension? How many custom dimensions does the application have? So all of those factors kind of play a role, and then from there, you design the FCCS application accordingly. But those are some of the key highlights of what you would want to analyze, before you would, head down this path. In terms of how you get there, Jeff, it's basically an export-import process. So like in the case of Duke, we just went into their HFM application. They actually use the old EPMA to maintain their dimensions. So we just export their dimensions out of HFM into a file, and, we manipulate that, and then we use that to load into FCCS. And then we also, can automate that process. But, for the most part, the building of the FCCS application is done within the cloud using the tools that you're looking at here, based on exporting, the various dimensions and data from HFM.
Right. Well, I guess that kind of poses another question I have, Jason, is around the integration with dimensionality. We're not using MPMA. We're using, the APIs. So HF is how. I'm sure that's different with FCCS in the cloud. Is it more in line with how you load dimensions with Essbase?
It is. Yep. It's exactly more in line, because the source file, the source file for dimension loads and the source file for data loads is all Essbase format.
Okay. Well, that'll make the implementation easier. Thanks.
And to automate things like, to script things out, you have EPM Automate, which allows you to create, scripts as well to update dimensions and data. And then on the Essbase side, you have the Essbase command line.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you everyone for joining today, and certainly if you have any follow-up questions, let us know, and we look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.